Hi everybody, welcome to Woodfired Weekly at Manna from Devon Cooking School. This week we are going to be making cinnamon buns. Lovely, light, soft, pillowy buns, lots of spice flavour, absolutely deliciously buttery. First thing we need to do is make some dough. In my bowl here I have 500 grams of flour, and here I've got a mix of strong white flour, about 2/3, and some plain flour, just to weaken it a little bit. Gives it a little bit of a softer, less sort of elastic texture. Also dried yeast, salt and sugar, and I mix all of those together. In my pan here I've got milk, whole milk, butter and some cardamom pods. So I've gone a little bit Scandinavian with this and added some cardamom as well, and I've just infused that with the milk. So I brought the milk up to scalding temperature with the cardamom pods in it. I took it out of the oven. It's just been sat cooling. I popped the butter into it to melt the butter, and now that's just warm. In this one I've got a beaten egg. So into the bowl goes the egg, along with the scalded milk. And the reason for scalding the milk is to denaturize the protein. What does that mean? It means you get a bigger, softer bun, basically. So all the liquids, all the dry goods are in there. We're going to mix it all up, and it should come together as a sort of slightly sticky, slightly tacky dough. But all of that tackiness is definitely going to disappear as we work it, because the fats and the flour are going to combine, and the butter's going to firm up a little bit. The butter at the moment completely melted. By the time I finish kneading, it will have firmed up. So I'm just gently working it. I can feel it strengthening. I can feel it getting a little bit drier as I do this. And I'm making sure that I sort of turn and stretch, all the ingredients get homogenized, and I'm putting lots of energy into it. And that energy will allow proteins to come together and form gluten, which will hold in lots of gas. So I'm happy with that. Pop that into the bowl. Our finished dough is ready, and we can set that aside in a warm place with a lid of some sort on it so it stays nice and humid. And after 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the ambient temperature, we should have a nicely risen dough. If I give that a push, it's feeling very soft and almost ready to collapse. So we can now get ready for the next stage, which is shaping and filling the cinnamon buns. So I've got in a pan here butter, sugar and cinnamon, and I'm just going to warm that up to soften the butter a little bit. So I'm just going to pop that in the oven. I don't really want it to melt completely, just to soften the butter. You should find that this dough is now much easier to handle. It will have lost all of its stickiness, so I can now work that quite comfortably on the table, knock all the gas out of it, and I'm sort of shaping it into a vague rectangle, not a perfect rectangle, ready to roll out. At this stage I'm using lots of flour to make sure it doesn't stick to the table, and you'll probably find that it's got quite elastic. So rather than trying to force it out, it may be worth rolling a little bit, letting it rest, rolling a little bit, letting it rest. The butter, the spice and sugar have melted together a little bit, and then it wants to cool down a bit before I put it onto the dough. I'm being nice and patient here, not trying to force this out all in one go. If I do that, it just kind of distorts the dough. So that's around about the size I want it, and I just stretch it a little bit so that it's got a nice rectangular shape to it. Now I'm ready with my topping. I'll just pour that all over. And if I try and roll this up straight away, the butter's too soft, it'll all come spilling out. So I'm going to leave that again for a minute or two. The butter will just harden a little bit. As you can see, I'm leaving a little strip down at the bottom where the roll is going to end. So it just needed a couple of minutes for the butter to start firming up a little bit, and now I'm ready to roll. So I start at the end furthest away from me, bring a fold over, and then just sort of tuck it back on itself a little bit. I want to try and keep it reasonably tight so that all the fillings stay in and they stay nice and tight and together. Try and keep the edges nice and parallel. There is sometimes a tendency for them to start to sort of stretch out a little bit, and then just sit it on the seam like that. If you've got a bit which is a little bit thick, you can give that a little squeeze and a stretch out. If you've got a bit which is a bit thin, you can just sort of nudge it up so that it's reasonably even. And then we're going to cut this into 8. So I just eyeball that, cut them, turn them over, sit them in the tray. They're all more or less the same size. So that's good. Then we want to cover that, set that aside in a warm place, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and we should be ready to bake. Your bun should look something like this. So nicely risen, soft to the touch, with just a little bit of response when I press into them. And now we're just going to give those an egg wash, just for a lovely golden colour on top. And then on top of that, I've got some sugar pearls. Could be a little bit of demerara sugar or granulated sugar, jam sugar, nice coarse granulated sugar. But these sugar pearls are great and give a little bit of a crunch. And then we're ready for the oven. So the oven I have preheated, cleared out and settled, and I want it to be around about 180 degrees, 5 Mississippi. So these are going to take 15, 20 minutes in the oven depending on the temperature, and I'll be glancing after 5 minutes just to see how quickly they're browning up. The cinnamon buns have had about 5 minutes in the oven, so we're going to have a quick look, judge how quickly they're browning, then we can decide whether we need to put the door on and how much longer they're going to need. So those are rising nicely, not browning too quickly. So now I'm going to put the door on just lightly. So I haven't quite closed that 100%, just left it open a crack. I'm going to set the clock now for another 10 minutes, that won't be any problem at all, and on they go. The cinnamon buns have had another 10 minutes or so. We're going to have a look. I'd expect them to be done or very close to done now. So we've got wonderfully risen buns. If I push them, they look like they're springing back nicely. So that's telling me they're cooked. So there are cinnamon buns with a hint of cardamom, smelling absolutely fantastic. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. We do provide a video every week. We'll provide details of the recipe on our blog, and we'll put a link to that below. We'll see you next time.